What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So the Brexiteer Tom Harwood appeared on the Remainstream media earlier today, talking about the Prime Minister's visit to Wales and a no-deal Brexit. He was joined by second referendum demanding Remoaner Phoebe Potter from the campaign group Our Future, Our Choice, who gets caught out time and time again talking complete rubbish as is usual with Remoaners. Let's check it out.
Joined by Tom Harwood from the Brexiteer news website Guido Fawkes and Phoebe Potter from the second referendum campaign group Our Future, Our Choice. Ladies first, what do you think he has to say in Wales to reassure them that all will be well if there is a no-deal Brexit?
I think, to be honest, there is very little that Boris Johnson can say to farmers in Wales to reassure them. We actually heard from the head of the National Farming Union this morning that a no-deal Brexit will be an absolute catastrophe for Welsh farmers, particularly as they export 40% of sheep. There's no reason. Boris has given no platitudes, no plans as to how he is going to deal with the fallout of that. So I think, frankly, there's very little Boris Johnson can say, but it's nice that he's gone along to say hello.
OK, Tom?
Well, farmers across this country, almost to a man and woman, absolutely loathe the European Union's common agricultural policy. It's a policy that's incredibly bad for our domestic farmers, and so moving out of the EU, we will be able to set policies that work for our own farmers and aren't set by sort of the needs of continental countries like France. We can set something that's much more suited to our country and our farmers. And it's a really exciting time for farmers to be able to specialise and deliver to more global markets rather than just focusing in on one declining part of the world. We can follow countries like New Zealand, which had an agricultural boom when they moved to a more free trade economy, in the way that we can if we leave the European Union at the end of October. Now New Zealand sheep are sort of the best of the world because they removed their tariffs. And if we leave the European Union, we can remove common agricultural policy tariffs. We can do what New Zealand did, and it can be a really exciting time for our agricultural sector.
Phoebe?
Well, quite frankly, it's all very well for Tom to talk about this sort of dreamland where we'll have these, be able to make these brilliant deals. But what we are headed for is a no-deal Brexit on October the 31st, which is in 3 months' time. And there are currently no deals in place. So if we wake up on the 1st of November, we do not have the time. We do not have the luxury of spending years trying to work out some new deals. There are going to be farmers left, right and centre. And that is why the National Farmers Union, who I think would be well placed to speak with authority on the subject, have warned so strongly against it this morning.
So Tom points out that farmers hate the EU policies. A clean Brexit will allow us to make regulations that suit the UK's needs directly. Of course, the Remainstream media won't point that out because it does not suit their narrative. The same is true for fishing also. The SNP moan about Brexit while ignoring the fact we will have 200 miles of coastal fishing all around Scotland to ourselves, no longer fished by EU boats. He points out that the EU policies are terrible for the UK farmers these Remainers are trying to use as propaganda against Brexit. Let's not forget, Wales voted to leave the EU. Once we are free of the EU's trading shackles, as Tom says, farmers can trade with the rest of the world much more freely, and also, we must remember that the EU will still want our goods, so we will still be able to trade with them. He says we can move to a similar free trade economy that New Zealand enjoys. Of course, the Remoaner spouts complete shit saying there is no deals in place, when there is actually at least 17 in place, with over 200 procedures underway to deal with a no-deal Brexit, as the Remainstream media actually admitted yesterday and I covered in a video. This woman thinks it takes years to work out deals, when no it does not. WTO terms are already established, which in itself is a deal, you idiot. She said the National Farmers Union claim it's bad, so that must be true. Of course, not telling us that the National Farmers Union has offices in Brussels, so I would say it has a vested interest in staying within the EU, even when the farmers might disagree with them. Let's hear Tom's response to her Remoaning bullshit though.
Tom?
That's simply not true. What we have is, for example, groups like the National Farmers Union saying it's going to be bad because we're going to move to a more free trading economy where the goods will be cheaper for people, imports will be cheaper for consumers in this country. But then you get some other lobby groups saying that, the prices of food are supposed to shoot up. Well, that would be good for farmers. Which is it? Remainers simply can't decide which scare stories they want to use depending on the day of the week it is. What we do know is when we leave the EU, on day one we get control over our tariff regime. We will be able to set our own trading relationship with the world, and we can set one that's in the interests of our own farmers.
Yeah, but if you want to answer Phoebe's point, which was what deals have we got in place at the moment after the 31st of October?
Well, if you look at the New Zealand example, they didn't need any deals. You don't need deals. You can unilaterally do a whole host of measures, whether it's subsidising farmers or whether it's slashing those tariffs, which you gain control over once you leave the European Union. Getting rid of those tariffs, moving into global markets, moving to what's called unilateral free trade, which is what countries like New Zealand have done. That's an excellent model for our country to pursue, and it's something that we don't need any deals in place at all to enable.
That's just not true. You cannot possibly say we don't need deals in place for us to export the sheep from this country.
Well, you don't need deals in place to export. Deals do, I would totally agree, deals do make it easier to export, but there are lots of countries around the world that we don't have deals with. Actually, one of the reasons why I would quite like to leave the European Union is there are lots of countries, some of the biggest markets in the world, like America, that we currently have no deals with. And being able to strike those deals with friendly governments who've been keen to strike those deals with us will be good, but in the short term, there are unilateral measures that we can put in place that the government's planning for that will be able to deliver a very, very bright future for all sectors, but also particularly consumers. And I think in this conversation, consumers are often forgotten about. It's very, very important that we deliver cheap food and plentiful food for people up and down this country. Most people aren't farmers and will be very, very happy to see the incredibly high agricultural tariffs that the EU places on imports from the rest of the world come down. Okay. We'll be able to buy food from all over the world at much cheaper prices, and that's good for particularly the poorest communities in this country.
Right, so Tom started his response to her nonsense, stating groups are complaining about moving to a free trade economy because prices will be low for consumers, while others are saying it will raise food prices, which is actually good for farmers. Pointing out these Remoaners can't decide which scare story they want to stick to, depending on the day of the week it is. That's the spirit, Tom. Call out these dirty commie cumbuckets for their blatant bullshit stories to push whatever narrative is being used that day. He finishes up stating we don't need to do direct deals like the EU want. We can do what is known as a unilateral free trade deal that other countries already enjoy, as I said earlier. He points out some of the biggest markets in the world will now become available to us thanks to Brexit, which will only help our economy grow. He points out getting new trade deals with other nations around the world will help bring down the cost of goods in the UK, which is an obvious help to consumers. Cheaper electronics like phones and computer parts direct from Asia will be massively reduced without the EU tariffs on them. The same applies to food. Let's check out what the Remoaner had to say in response to that, though.
Yeah, sure, maybe. It's not just about being cheaper. The EU provides us with some of the highest food standards in the world. What are you going to say to them when they get decimated from us leaving with no deal?
The EU has some of the highest food standards in the world. I think it was because of the movement across the EU that we all ended up eating horse just a few years ago. It's ridiculous. It's a fantasy to say that the European Union protects food standards. Actually, it's some of the European Union countries have very, very low standards of food, and the UK for years and years has been a world leader in terms of standards of food. It's us that are leading the way within the European Union, and we will lead the way outside of the European Union as well. Our standards are so much higher than so many other EU countries.
Phoebe?
Well, I mean, to say that the EU doesn't have high food standards, I mean, he's basically advocating that we are going to have higher food standards if we enter into a trade deal with America, where we've had all sorts of threats of chlorinated chicken and whatever you want to talk about. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to say that we are in a better place to have higher food standards that are going to provide for the people in this country when we start on the 1st of November with no trade deals for the farmers or for consumers.
We can have absolutely higher food standards, but also stronger choice, and consumer choice is what really matters. I wouldn't mind being able to import American food to this country as long as it was clearly labelled, and I think that's what the government's planning for. Being able to buy produce from all around the world is an exciting opportunity, and it's a shame to see sort of navel-gazing Remainers shy away from the opportunities of global trade. We shouldn't only look inwards to our one little continent, we should look outwards to the world. And that means accepting imports from all over the place, as long as they're clearly labelled, as long as people can have clear choices. That's what's important. And opening up our markets will deliver such benefits, particularly for people on low incomes. And that's one of the many, many benefits that Brexit can bring to consumers up and down this country.
I mean, I certainly agree that we should be looking outwards to the world. I agree we should form as close alliances with other countries as we possibly can. But that is why, with such a strong alliance with the EU and with the trade deals we have in place and the trading bloc we have in place, we have one of the strongest negotiating positions in the world to form those deals. And when we leave the EU on 1st of November, where we currently will be left in a position without any deals with the EU or any other countries, we will be in an incredibly weak position to start negotiating those deals. We should start from a position of strength, which we are currently in, and continue with that.
The EU doesn't have deals with some of the largest markets in the world, with China, with America, with Australia, with Brazil. All of these countries have no agreements with the European Union. And being able to leave the European Union, we'll be able to finally, for the first time in 40 years, negotiate these deals by ourselves. At the moment, Brussels has to do that for us. And that means that things are decided in those deals that we don't have control over. Most countries in the European Union have market-based healthcare systems. The European Union could, for example, sign a trade deal with America that would put our NHS at risk. Us being in control of our own trade deals means that we'll be able to protect things like our precious NHS. We'll be able to protect our own vital interests as this country and make deals that are beneficial to us. Leaving it all to Brussels puts a lot of things at risk.
Okay.
So, surprise, surprise, we hear more complete shit from this Remoaner bin, who claims the EU has some of the best food standards in the world. That is quickly shut down by Tom with the fact that we was all being fed horse meat thanks to the EU standards on food recently. The EU's food standards are so great, we don't even know what meat is used in the food we're eating. Could have been rat meat for all we knew. Of course, this undemocratic tramp can't accept that the EU is not the best thing in the world, so she attacks American food quality instead. Which, last I checked, the US citizens are not dying in mass numbers from their food, neither are they being fed horse. Being able to get food from more places will help the poorest people in the country, which you would think this Lib Dem or Labour voting spunk trumpet would want. But no, because it does not fit her narrative, she is dead against lower food prices. She thinks when we leave the EU, we will have a weaker negotiating position with other countries around the world. Of course, ignoring the fact we're motherfucking Great Britain, known the world over long before the EU was even a pipe dream. I think we will be fine without the European Union now, thanks. She goes back to that same old bullshit I already called her out for, saying we have no deal in place when we all know we do. The Remainstream media have even reported it themselves, the Japan and Korea deals for instance. Did she fact check any of the shit she spouts before coming on here? I would bet not, since Remoaners ignore the facts to suit their ideology. Of course, Tom rightly points out that the EU don't have trading deals with some of the biggest markets in the world, like China, America or Brazil. So the EU are hardly helping us trade, are they? Leaving will allow us to trade how we want. I do feel Tom is wasting his time here though. Nothing he says will get through this commie cumbucket's thick skull. He points out the EU could sign a trade deal with the USA that would put our NHS at risk. Now, we all heard the Remoaners' claims that the US was going to buy the NHS if Brexit was done and we did a trade deal with them. Well, Tom is now turning the tables because the EU could do a trade deal behind our back if we remained in the EU with their current fucking course. Let's hear what Phoebe had to say about that though.
Phoebe?
To say that our NHS is safer if we leave the EU because the EU could do a deal on its on healthcare markets with the USA is quite ridiculous. The NHS is under severe threat, particularly if we have to cozy up to Donald Trump, who has repeatedly suggested the NHS may be on the table in any future trade negotiation with the USA. The NHS is far safer if we are closely aligned with the EU, where we all have protected healthcare systems, unlike in the USA, which has a private form of healthcare, which nobody in this country wants to see happen to us.
Every other EU country has a private form of healthcare. The NHS is unique in Europe in terms of the kind of service that it delivers. No other EU country delivers what we do in this country. It's a fantasy to say that the EU is somehow a protector or guarantor of our NHS, handing over control to people who do not have this country's interests at heart, handing over control to what's called qualified majority voting, which is what the new president of the Commission wants to put in charge of almost every decision in the European Union, meaning countries like Britain could be shut out of those. We would lose our vetoes as the EU progresses to a more centralising system. We will be losing control over what matters most to people in this country. That's why we have to leave the European Union. That's why we have to take back control. And that's why I'm so excited for the possibilities that will present themselves to us as soon as we get to that Halloween deadline.
I mean, I'm very glad that Tom is excited about the possibilities that are going to present themselves to us. But quite frankly, what we're not headed toward is a Halloween deadline, but a Halloween nightmare. On the 31st of October, we are set to crash out of the EU with no deal because Boris Johnson, slip of the tongue there, thinks that he can play fast and loose with people's livelihoods. He can play Russian roulette with the future of this country. He's saying that he's using no deal as a bluff. Well, that bluff may well get called. And if it does get called, we are headed towards a catastrophe no-deal Brexit, which could risk the breakup of the United Kingdom. It could decimate manufacturing industry in this country. It could cause economic disaster. I mean, the list goes on. It could be a severe threat to peace in Northern Ireland. It is not simply an opportunity to open ourselves up to the world if we fall off a cliff on the 31st of October.
So there's her clear EU bias. She claims it's ridiculous to think the EU would do a deal to sell our NHS, clearly showing her complete ignorance to the way the EU works and plans to work in the future. Claiming the NHS is under risk from a trade deal with the US and how Trump has said many times the NHS would be involved in said trade deals is just another lie. He said it once and then was told by Maybot that it would never happen and he had to accept it. No government will sell that off. It would create uproar. He left it at that. She claims the EU has protected healthcare systems like the NHS, which we all know is complete shit. The NHS is unique in Europe. No other European nation has it. Why do you think they're always trying to come here for it? Free healthcare, you idiot. It's not rocket science. Of course, Tom absolutely shits on her bullshit claims, pointing out to her that all EU nations have a US-style healthcare system. That's why you get travel insurance, dickhead. You need to pay for care if required. He tells her she is living in a fantasy world if she thinks the EU is a protector of our National Health Service. Rightly saying it would be stupid to hand over control of our NHS to a place that does not have the UK's best interests at heart, especially when the EU wants to bring in qualified majority voting that Ursula von der Leyen on her back is pushing for, meaning the UK would not be able to veto anything put forward by the EU. We all know that is what this Remoaner wants though. She wants to be a part of the EU superstate, as we're like Tom, we are all excited about the possibilities Brexit will bring to this country. Of course the Remoaner is still full of doom and gloom and calls Halloween Brexit Day a nightmare, because everything is despair and chaos with these people. It's actually a serious mental condition now. I think she also might be suffering a bit of Trump derangement syndrome though, as she nearly blames Donald Trump for the UK crashing out of the EU. Maybe that's what she complains about when she's not moaning about Brexit, so she got a bit muddled up. She is a professional complainer after all. Everything is a disaster or a catastrophe causing the end of the Union, and the UK will be blasted off into space. It will be the end of the world as we know it. What a complete joke this woman really is. Now let's move on to the final clip.
Leaving the European Union enables us to open up to the world, you're right, but it also isn't the sort of disaster that you're trying to paint. Clearly a deal would be preferable, but no deal is simply really manageable. We've got some of the brightest minds in this country now working on it, flat out, in a way that hadn't been happening in the previous 3 years. We're now in a new dynamic, and this new dynamic will deliver a better deal. It's very clear. We are saying to the European Union, we would like a free trade deal. We don't want an anti-democratic backstop. What we would like is an ordinary free trade deal, like the EU does with most other countries around the world that it has deals with. And that should be very simple to accept. If the EU want to play games, that's on them. But currently, we're preparing for no deal, and if the EU would like a deal with us, they know where to come.
You say they're some of the brightest minds in the country. Quite frankly, what Boris Johnson has put together in Cabinet and in his government is, the Vote Leave masters. They are the people who were advocating for Vote Leave in 2016.
Finally,
and if
after
they haven't,
3 years,
absolutely,
finally have people who advocated for this project in
these people, they did. But Boris Johnson in 2016, Tom, he advocated to stay in the single market. They have changed their minds because they have seen.
Not true.
That is true. And negotiating
Simply
over the last
true.
3 years.
Sorry, did you watch any of the debates? Did you see any of the TV interviews?
Guys, here's the thing. If you talk over each other, we can't hear at home what you're saying. You carry on, Phoebe, go.
Thank you. So what I was saying is in 2016, Vote Leave and his Boris Johnson's government, who were then the Vote Leave team, were advocating absolutely nobody was advocating for no deal. It was not put to the public that we could be leaving the EU with no deal. Boris Johnson himself was advocating to stay in the single market. He has completely rejected that idea now. He has changed his mind. It is only right that now he has changed his mind and the reality has become clear that the public are allowed to decide, now they have seen what is on the table, whether they would like the deal we currently have with the EU or a deal that Boris Johnson says he is going to be able to negotiate with the EU, although I don't know how he's going to do that if he doesn't actually go to the table with him, which he is currently refusing to do. This is the only right, when they have changed their minds, that the public allowed to have a final say on what that Brexit deal is.
It's extraordinary that you're allowed to get away with this. This is simply not true. You're telling absolute fabrications. The vote
is it true, Tom? Did anyone advocate for no deal in 2016?
Sorry,
okay,
the Vote Leave campaign was incredibly clear that we would be leaving the single market. The Remain campaign put out press releases and posters saying Vote Leave have admitted we're going to leave the single market. David Cameron said we'd be leaving the single market. Michael Gove said we'd be leaving the single market. Boris Johnson said we'd be leaving the single market in front of debate audiences and television programmes. Andrew Marr, Faisal Islam, you name it. This was the campaign. I'm amazed that you're trying to rewrite history.
I'm not.
This is what was
my question,
said
Tom,
consistently.
My question was anyone advocating for no deal in 2016? Can you answer that?
No one is advocating for no deal today. No one is advocating for no deal in 2016. We're saying no deal is better than a bad deal. That's simple negotiation. Of course, no deal is better than a bad deal.
No deal is bad is a very good line, but it's not actually true, is it?
Let's have a look at what David Cameron said in his excellent interview with Faisal Islam during the campaign. He said we have 2 years to negotiate a deal, and if we don't negotiate a deal, we're out on WTO terms.
Okay.
That's a direct quote from the Prime Minister at the time. Of course it was discussed during the referendum.
Sadly, we are out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. That was a spirited debate. It'd be really good if you guys wanted to come up here to Osterley. We'll have a half an hour chat on the sofa, maybe next week or the week after. Maybe put it in your diaries. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you.
So, Tom rightly destroys this woman's bullshit disaster theories, stating a good deal would be preferable, like a free trade deal, but we have some bright people here working on a no-deal Brexit. It reminds her that everyone wants to work with the EU, but on our terms. If the EU want to play games, then we will leave without a deal, and they are fucked, as we already know. She complains that Boris Johnson's cabinet is all Brexiteers and questions their intelligence, which is complete bullshit. We all know there's a lot of Remainers in the Boris Johnson cabinet. It's a concern if you ask me. Now Tom thinks it's a good thing there is at least some true Brexiteers in the cabinet, which is a fair point. She claims Boris advocated staying in the single market, which we all know is not true. He wrote 2 articles, one for Remain, one for Leave. That's called being a columnist, you idiot. Tom shuts her bullshit down saying, did you watch any of the debates before the referendum? Which I can answer for her. No, she did not. She has no idea what she is talking about, so I would say she never even knew there was debates being held before the vote. She claims no one advocated for a no deal, even though the Tory party campaigned on it and an MPM said no deal is better than a bad deal. Tom rightly questions how she's able to come on the TV and outright lie. I can tell you why, Tom. It's the Remainstream media. Lying is what they do. The Leave campaign said we will leave the single market along with many MPs. As Tom rightly points out, he states the government is planning for no deal because no deal is better than a bad deal, stating even the shitweasel Cameron said if we don't get a deal in 2 years, then we leave on WTO terms, arsehole. The clip ends with the host asking them back next week, so I will try and keep a lookout for that. Well, the Brexiteer destroyed her nonsensical claims every time, as you see. The host kept her nose out of it, except when they talked over each other, so well done to her. Once again though, this Remoaner has done zero research before coming on, literally outright lying about everything they claim will happen or has happened. Well done, Tom. You dealt with her extremely well. So I'm going to end the video there, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.